cut back on. And then also we discussed snow plowing, and that will be a program that will be rolled out. I believe they're going to kind of break it up in 4 quadrants of the city where there'll be trucks all the time at one point in time doing the snow plowing, instead of 10 trucks over in one part of the city and no trucks over in another part. They want to make sure that the whole city of Flint has trucks going at the same time for snow plowing. So we'll get further update on that also in our next Public Works Committee meeting, and that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all very much for your reports. There are no appointments this evening, no licenses, no bonds, no resolutions. Just to the resolution back, I also, when Ms. Brown and I met with the emergency manager, and just for my colleagues that want to know why I meet with them, he requests a meeting with myself and Ms. Brown and the vice president prior to the council meeting for us to kind of go over to the agenda. So at that meeting today, I mentioned to him that he needed to start getting resolutions to the committees so that the committees could review them, and then they could be on our agenda so that we could start to act on some resolutions. So how do I put it, Inez? He said that he would review my request, right? That's what he said. So just so you guys know that I'm pushing to get more things on our agenda for us to be able to act on. Liquor licenses, there are none. Ordinances, we have a number of ordinances, and then Councilman Mays, I'll come back to you, okay?
Okay.
Is that all right?
That's all right.
Ordinances, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have the one add-on ordinance that deals with the International Fire Code. So, Councilman Neely, you're the chair. Councilman Mays, either one of you want to make a motion on these ordinances? You want to do them one at a time, or you want to do all of them at once? It's up to you guys.
Well, I would like to have had our city attorney here to just give a brief description for the public.
You know, I'll walk down and get him. In the meantime, the one ordinance deals with zoning and special regulated use, and we have Sherry Pierce here.
Okay.
If Sherry wants to quickly address the zoning ordinance.
Prior to her, if I may, Mr. President, that special use ordinance, I think they're going to find out is connected with the medical marijuana provision, because that special use ordinance is going to be regulated use. If I'm not mistaken, she can correct me, but I want to see if she'll address kind of if they are connected, talk about them in that way. Because that, if I'm not mistaken, that special regulated use ordinance is going to include, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that medical marijuana aspect of the special use.
Here it comes. Okay. He's here.
There he comes.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in, but if there's an add-on, why weren't these brought to us for now? Because not all of us were at legislative.
And I understand that. It's
Right.
Well, let me just, Councilman Neely, can I
Yes, go
explain?
ahead, please.
Do you
Yes.
mind?
Yes.
The International Fire Code is something that is presented and updated every year.
Okay.
We had a representative from the fire department, and again, this ordinance is just for first reading, moves us to the next level of code regulations that deal with public safety. And it was the committee's recommendation that why we go through this process, because it deals with public safety, that we, and I believe our last updated version was 2006, I believe.
Correct,
Is that correct?
correct.
And the new code is now 2015, so our ordinance is out of date with the recommendation of the International Firefighters Code and Commission. So we felt that it was important that it's a couple paragraph changes to the ordinance, that we move it for first reading tonight, and then all council members and the public will have the opportunity to comment on it in the September council meeting.
Mr. President, while
Councilman Mays, go
while
ahead.
Mr. Freeman digests that, I kind of smile because, you know, as I watch the chairpersons give their report, I've noticed from being in attendance at the various committee meetings, along with, I noticed Mrs. Councilwoman Galloway seemed to be in attendance. We pick up a lot by attending a lot of those different meetings, and so I kind of smile at Councilman Freeman because as we get ready to transition back, I hope that you will mention, and I hope it become a thing that each of these committees, we used to do well as a council when we worked as a committee of the whole. And so every chairperson had 8 other people there. And so as I see it moving, I appreciate it. And I believe not only for Councilman Freeman should we talk about the details of it, but more importantly for the public. When we deal with such ordinances and first readings, and I know it'll be public hearings and it'll be opportunities for second readings, but just as me, my colleagues, Councilman Freeman, I would appreciate the type of communications that you just gave for colleagues, and you did it in that one. I'm so glad that the public can understand what we're doing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Mays. Councilman Neely, you want to interact with the attorney or Sherry Pierce on the ordinances that are before us?
Yeah, just Peter, just briefly, the ordinances before us tonight, if you just give a brief overview, a snapshot for the residents and those who's going to be in the viewing audience, what these ordinances are and what we're going to be voting on tonight.
Yeah, I apologize for my absence. I had a family matter that I had to attend to. The first 2 ordinances, items number 140406.1 and 140408, concern an amendment to the fireworks ordinance and allow the city to regulate in part the use of fireworks. As you may know, the state of Michigan adopted a statute that largely occupies the field and regulates the sale and use of fireworks. Historically, municipalities were able to regulate fireworks more broadly than they currently are, and so we've amended our ordinance to remove those sections that are inconsistent with state law, but also it continues to regulate when fireworks may be discharged.
Mr. Chairman, would it be proper to move 41406.1 and 140408 for first reading?
I'll recognize that motion if there's support. It's been moved and supported. Discussion on it? Madam Clerk just stepped out. Janelle, can you do roll for me? Here's the mic.
Mr. Mays?
Yes.
Ms. Poplar?
Yes.
Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman? Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Neely?
Yes.
Ms. Galloway?
Yes.
Ms. Van Buren?
Yes.
Mr. Kincaid?
Yes. Thank you, Janelle.
The next ordinance, proposed amendment is item number 140409. And this is really to recommend that Article the article dealing with outdoor pay telephones simply be eliminated. This came up because as we were reviewing ordinances, the numbering was out of sequence. This had actually been used twice, but in reviewing it, it was our recommendation that there's no need to regulate outdoor pay phones. They're really not used that much with the advent of cell phones. And so that's why this particular ordinance was proposed, just to eliminate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Mays?
I would move 140409 for first reading.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Further discussion? Roll, Madam Clerk.
That's only one ordinance that he's moving?
Just that one, 140409. It's to move the first reading.
Mr. Nolden?
No, oh, yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Should have started with Jackie. Councilwoman Poppins.
Just one second, we get it.
Well, Janelle didn't start with Jackie, that's why.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Ms.
why I
Poplar?
said.
Yes.
Mr. Nolden?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Neely?
Yes.
Ms. Galloway?
Yes?
Ms. Van Buren?
Yes.
Mr. Kincaid?
Yes.
Mr. Mays?
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no to move for first reading, 140409.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. 140500.
This is the medical marijuana ordinance. It would regulate medical marijuana provisioning centers, and it's a companion ordinance is 140501, which is an amendment of the zoning special regulated use chapter, and Sherry Pierce can address the specific designated zoning areas. The zoning amendment does include, it identifies those dispensaries that were in operation prior to the city's moratorium. Any dispensary that is not listed, and that's listed in a footnote to that amendment, any dispensaries that started operations after the city's moratorium are subject to all provisions of the zoning regulations, and all dispensaries are subject to the ordinance regulating provisioning centers. So even those that are grandfathered in would be subject to the regulations, for example, that employees be licensed, and that, for example, that the police would have the right to enter the premises at any time during hours of operation without a warrant.
Mr. President,
Councilman Mays?
I would move 140500 and 140501 for first reading.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Discussion?
Just a
Yes.
Hold on. Councilman Neely?
Yeah, just to Peter, so people can have a clear understanding. These ordinance changes will be for all medical marijuana dispensaries in total, even the ones that's been previously grandfathered, correct?
That's correct.
Just, I wanted to make that clear for them, making sure that we didn't have two different groups.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Mays?
Yeah, Mr. President, I've moved those two medical marijuana companion ordinances for first reading. I've also want the public to know that I've asked that they go back and we talk a little more in committee. I know they had been at first reading before, correct?
That's correct.
And then there was some amendments and changes in law, and then they went back and started over, and now they're back at first reading again in a different form. Whenever things change, they say substantially or to some extent, however they describe it, then they start over from first reading. So I do move this for first reading, and I do understand that it's a lot of people watching, and I would like for Sherry Pierce to shed light on it if she may during this discussion period. Mr. Kincaid, not so much for my benefit. I know what some of the details of it is, and I know what some of my concerns are after first reading and things I'll talk about in between first and second reading. but I would, because her name has came up. She's been involved with the planning commission and she know it. I know she don't talk as much as I do, but if it's something that she would like to chime in on at this time, or I would like for anybody to really do a little bit of discussion. I see Councilwoman Galloway, but this medical marijuana thing is happening all across the state, and I believe that we're behind by not putting something in place because, you know, we've kept people out with this moratorium. And I believe that I want to take a closer look at that list of people who have been grandfather claused in, and I think I've made, if I haven't made the referral, I'll make it. I need a detailed list of that history, and I'll kind of acquiesce and work a little behind the scenes and hope we're almost there. But I'm going to be quiet for Councilwoman Galloway and or Sherry Pierce or anybody else who is trying to catch up as to what we've been looking at so far.
Thank you, Councilman Mays. Before I call on Sherry Pierce, if she wants to address the zoning portion of it, Councilperson Galloway.
I did speak with Attorney Bade and share that I would like to talk more, maybe one-on-one, but there are some concerns that I have. I don't know a lot about the ordinance, but some of my concerns are what are the safeguards to ensure that abuse is not happening. I know that there's a clause or it's written in the ordinance that we can go on the property at any time. I just wonder, do we have the manpower and or the passion to do so? And I only say that because personally, I went into one on Dort Highway. I think it's in your ward, Scott. And the first thing that alarmed me is this is a marijuana dispensary, and I don't have a problem with that. I know that people need it for illnesses and things like that. My question is, if it's such a beneficial thing, why aren't some of the hospitals taking it up? But in pulling up to this dispensary, on the window, it has a sign saying candy and water for sale. To me, that's inappropriate. Because if you've got children that are interested in candy and water, why should you be selling that in a marijuana dispensary? So as soon as you walk in, of course, because marijuana is so strong, it's just everywhere. And so it alarmed me that they would be advertising that type of solicitation for people that could be underage that would be interested in buying that. And then, of course, because, you know, this is what they do, I mean, everything you can think of to do marijuana, and I understand the concept. But then the two people that were there didn't appear to be professionals to me. And I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, but they look like somebody that I would have ran into in my community that may have now been in a position to implement the marijuana supply. And it didn't work for me. And they didn't care. The young lady was sitting on the couch just as matter-of-factly, and it didn't say professionalism to me. And I think that when you are in a position in which you are called to implement such a substance that has been abused in our communities, I think that there should be some safeguards. And it didn't speak safeguard. And of course, this is only one. But the young man was clear. I asked him, what are your qualifications to do this? And the young lady said, well, you know, I went to social work and this was a good thing. And I said to him, I said, because, you know, I've had a family. People have abused this. And the young man said, like you, I've had that. And this has brought me to a place where I can help people. That didn't work for me. And I just want to make sure that as a city, I want to know how beneficial is this really for us. And is it going to set us back? Because we still have to understand the population that we service. And so I just wanted that to be on the record. I do have some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilperson Galloway. Sherry, you want to talk about, just real quick, update us on the planning commission and what they did and the zoning for dispensaries?
Sure.
Thank you.
The Planning Commission met on August 12th, and they recommended approval to this body to amend the ordinance to include marijuana provisioning centers or dispensaries as a special regulated use in the zoning ordinance. That would mean part of the process would be an applicant would make an application to the Planning Commission, go before a public hearing, and they would have to meet the qualifications of a locational qualifications to start a business with quite, well, let me say it, as a Group E, they would call it special regulated use. Therefore, they would need to, the ordinance states that they would have to be not within 1,000 feet of a K through 12 school, a park, a church, or another E, medical marijuana dispensary business. Also, there could not be more than 4 E, or as they say, A, Group A, adult entertainment uses within 2,000 feet of this proposed business. It would also have to be within a commercial or an industrial district, which currently would be D2, D3, D6, E, F, or G. They eliminated the D4 or D5 zoning district, which is basically your downtown and central business district, just right outside of downtown. So that would be the process for a special regulated use for the zoning portion of it. I believe that would be their number one step to open up a business, would be to find a location, a proper location, and that would meet these qualifications, and then at that point it would come to the licensing portion of it. Then that process would be to apply for the license, to have criminal background checks, building inspections, fire marshal, licensing for the location, for also the caregivers, each caregiver, the employees. There's a few more details in the ordinance that they would have to go through for the licensing. And we would have to, go through that process and get a checklist. It's pretty extensive.
Okay.
Mr.
Let
Chairman.
Are you through, Sherry?
Yeah.
Okay, the attorney wants to make a couple more points, and then I'm going to come back to Councilperson Galloway. Then I'll come back to you, Councilman Mays, if you have a question.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight a couple points in the ordinance and sort of to speak to Councilman May's comments. We're currently really not regulating dispensaries, so there's a little bit of a Wild West feel to things. Our ordinance this is a very heavily regulated field under our ordinance, so this is a step in the direction of regulation. And the first step for dispensary under the ordinance is a $5,000 fee, annual fee. That would go to pay for the cost of enforcement and having our officers time to go in and make sure. Every employee must also be licensed. People with a felony conviction for drug-related offenses are not permitted to work in a dispensary. The zoning regulations are extremely narrow. There's not very many places in the city that dispensaries are authorized. And as mentioned, our police officers will have total freedom to enter and inspect the premises. People under 18 years old are not permitted on premises unless they possess a valid patient card and are accompanied by a parent or guardian. So, in my view, this ordinance goes to great lengths to regulate this field. It also restricts the hours of operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Galloway, do you have anything else? Sherry?
Sherry, what was that about, they could be 2,000 square feet from adult? What Was that-
Adult entertainment uses?
And how long, that's the new ordinance, it wasn't, I mean, the new zoning, it wasn't in place before. And the reason why I'm asking is because, and I don't know how far 2,000 is, but this dispensary is, I mean, I don't know what 2,000, but it's right by Little Darlings and Deja Vu. And
Well,
so-
there would be a total, no more than 4, within 2,000 square foot radius
Oh, okay. Okay.
of a combination of adult entertainment uses and medical marijuana business.
And was that something that you guys came up with, or where did that come from?
Well, currently there is, in the ordinance for a special regulated use for an adult entertainment, they use 2,000, you can't have with more than 4 adult entertainment within 2,000 square foot radius. So it's kind of mimics that, the adult
You said
entertainment.
that's on the state level, you said?
No, our city ordinance.
Our current city ordinance?
Correct.
Okay.
As a special regulated use, regulating adult entertainment.
And I think that, and the reason why, that's very interesting to me, and I'd like to know where the origin of that is, because anytime that you look at some of the research on rape, things of that nature, substance abuse can be tied into it. So the fact that someone recognized that there should be a boundary set means that there was something in someone's mind to say we need to kind of safeguard this. So I'd like to maybe visit that. And then Attorney Bay, you were saying that there's a $5,000 fee and that all of the employees have to be regulated. And I know that on the state level, they've, pushed this through, but I was under the impression, and I could be wrong if you can correct me, that legislation on the state level wasn't saying whether a city should or should not. It wasn't dictating that at all. It was giving cities the option to decide if it was best for their community or not, which gave me the impression, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that this isn't something that we have to do, because I heard Councilman Mays say that many states, cities in the state of Michigan or other states are doing it, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that they're not saying, hey, you need to have this. They're saying, should you choose to have it based on what you deem to be best for your community, these are some guidelines that we think might be helpful. Is that correct?
You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
There's proposed legislation currently pending in the state that would leave it to the discretion of municipalities to regulate dispensaries, but it's not required. The legislation would not require local municipalities to take this step.
Okay, so do we as a community have the ability, and I really would like for us to really do some research, do we have the ability to look at the implication? We talked about implementing something in the school systems the other day, the Pathway to Happiness, in which many of my colleagues were asking, what are the measurable benefits to implementing this program? I would hope that even now, if there is some data in our city that would share with us that this is a benefit and this is why we have thus and so cases, and this is why, you know what I mean? Like with liquor licenses, you can only have so many based on population. And so even in our legislation, I would like to see something that says, based on a population of this, how many do we actually have that have these marijuana cards that need access to this? And based on that, we need to make sure that we don't go to more than dispensaries than we need to. I would like to just implement that in. And the hours, I don't know about the hours. It seems like the one that I was in, they were open until like 2 or 3 in the morning. And so maybe that's a good regulated hour, but on Dort Highway, just seems like the time that nightclubs close down, and that's when they close down. So that didn't really make me, and I don't know when people get sick, don't get me wrong. I know we go to emergency. I'm just saying it still was alarming. But thank you guys for listening to me.
Thank you, Councilperson Galloway. I got Councilman Mays and then Councilman Freeman.
Yeah, I would encourage the council members and/or the public to attend the legislative committee meetings. That's where the information and the details, I would request that the council people read and look at the ordinance, and the public read and look at the ordinance and make any recommendations. I would say, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilwoman Galloway, for the one specific one that you're concerned about, if you look on page 2 of the proposed ordinance of special regulated use, it would be 7 or 8 medical marijuana type dispensaries, one named Michigan Organic Solutions on South Dort Highway, one named Med Station on South Dort Highway. At the bottom of page 2, you see some provision centers and some footnotes. Those are the 7 or 8 that I'm referring back to committee. We want to look at what's grandfathered in. If the one you're concerned about is not on that list, they might not even be able to locate that once this ordinance is enacted. The effect of it would be, if they're not on the list grandfathered in, they would have to move from, the area that you're concerned with, and might not be able to locate. So you got to be able to really understand the application. And my belief is a little different from yours, Councilwoman Galloway. I believe that since people in Flint can have medical marijuana cards issued under state law, that we are already allowing people to grow. And my concern is not only can they already grow, but they can grow in their home. And if you understand the definition of this, back when we were shaping it, a medical marijuana dispensary might be 2 or more. So if you had one person growing at home, they can do that anyway under state law. But when it gets into 2 or more and then move into the commercial arena, then a lot of this is being regulated. 2 or more in the home, I raised issues. Would they be subject to $5,000? When I listen to Ms. Pierce talk about in industrial or commercial areas, I'm concerned as well, because I do know of somebody who's proposing a hospital with doctors and things of that nature as this thing's developed. So I'll close by saying this. Mr. President, I appreciate you allowing this type of discussion on something that a lot of people have watched and anticipated in the public discussion. Look forward to colleagues and/or the public attending the committee meeting where the details are talked about. In council, details are in committee meetings. I hope Mr. Chair and the city attorney allow for enough time to discuss detail in committee meeting on this important issue. And I look forward to doing my private work, and I encourage people to read this privately as we move into second reading. Mr. President, as we get ready to vote, and I know I see Mr. Freeman, but as we get ready to vote, can you ask Mr. Bay to give me and the public and my colleagues a time frame between first, second reading? We'll be voting for first reading. What is an anticipated time frame for second reading, any public hearings on this, and then passage? Can he walk us through that?
I will.
You can?
I can.
Okay.
So-
Just for the public, I want the public to know the
When this
time
passes,
frame.
when this passes tonight, if this passes tonight, let me correct myself.
Right.
If this passes for first reading tonight, it will be at the September meeting for second reading and public hearing and adoption, and then it will go into effect upon publication, if we do immediate effect, or if we do not do immediate effect, which takes 6 votes of the council, then it would go into effect within 30 days and publication, okay? Clarified?
So if everything goes right and we don't kick it back for first read, no major amendments, it looks like we would have a medical
October.
marijuana provision on the book
the end of
somewhere in
October.
October.
At the end of October, 1st of November.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome, Councilman Mays. I'm going to go on to Councilman Freeman, and then we're going to take the vote.
I just want to get some clarification from Councilwoman Galloway. Were you asking whether or not we had to allow dispensaries in our community, or whether we could say we don't want dispensaries, or were you asking a different question?
No, I was saying that it was my understanding that the legislation that was passed didn't dictate that we had to. It gave us the option to decide yes or no to
Okay.
having them in the community.
And I don't know, I mean, from the way the attorney responded, I'm not sure that he understood that to be your question. Is that what, or am I?
Yep, I did understand your question. The legislation has not passed, though, it's just been proposed.
Right, which means that as a community, we can say yes to dispensaries or we can say no.
That's correct.
And
At this time.
Mr. President, I wanted to say this through you to Councilwoman Galloway. A dispensary is defined in some cases as 2 or more caregivers.
I just wanted to know if we
But
had the
as
option.
far as the growth and the caregiving of marijuana, it's already in the community, and now we're going to see how it's allowed and how it's regulated. So we don't have the right to say people can't have cards and be caregivers on a certain level, but what we're defining as a dispensary, it could be defined, and that's the ordinance. So I want us to really look at the definition of what a dispensary is that we're defining based upon, certain criteria. But we already have caregivers and people who can grow so many plants of marijuana under state law.
Okay,
I wasn't done with my questions.
Okay.
So,
I'm
with that
sorry.
understanding that there's legislation pending, does that mean currently that we can act to stop these dispensaries? Or does the legislation that's pending, is that what would give us that authority?
No, we could currently stop the dispensaries.
So then what is the pending legislation for them?
The state law at this point allows for patients to have medical marijuana cards and allows for caregivers, but what it doesn't really address is the provisioning piece. And that's what a lot of cities have been wrestling with is, okay, so somebody has glaucoma and they get a medical marijuana card, but how do they get the medical marijuana? And if they want to have a grow facility in their house and 5 plants, they can do it that way. But there's been a lot of confusion over how you get the product to the patient. And so the state law is now attempting to fill that gap and leave it up to municipalities. So in a way, the legislation will address the issue of dispensaries, or provisioning centers is the new term.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to have the clerk, and then we're going to vote.
Well, can I ask one more question? Attorney Bay, then if they do rule or pass down a ruling that tells how those residents can have access to that, right? Does that change the fact that we can say no or yes?
It doesn't change it at all.
Okay.
The proposed statute makes very clear that it's a local decision for the municipality to decide whether this is something that's good for our community or not. And if it's good for our community, we decide how we regulate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Brown, and then we're going to vote.
Okay. We've worked closely with Mr. Bade on this particular ordinance, on all of these ordinances, since we do the business licenses for, I can't remember how many years now. Probably 3 years.
Yeah.
But in that regard, we've had to change a couple of titles on the ordinances a number of times, and I want to pose this question to Mr. Bade, because I don't know if it should be corrected or not. On the first ordinance, where we're calling the provisioning centers now, on page 1, we're calling it provisioning centers. That's under 140500.
Right.
And then in the zoning component, instead of calling it, that's under 140501 on page 2, we're listing it as medical marijuana dispensaries. So my question is, should we not be consistent in terms of calling them provisional centers, or do we want to call them dispensaries?
They should be called provisioning centers throughout, and if you look at the footnote and on the zoning, it refers to provisioning centers, so it should be referred to provisioning centers in all sections.
So in that regard, though, at the top of page 2 of the item that I mentioned, under subsection 5, group E, we're calling them medical marijuana dispensaries and not provisioning centers.
Yeah, that
So
should be
it could
amended.
it should be changed to,
It should.
okay, if we could
We'll
move for that change.
Could I get someone to make a
So
motion to amend it from
Support.
medical marijuana dispensary, that provision to provision center? It's been moved and supported. Roll on the proposed
Any
amendment.
discussion on the amendment?
I'm sorry?
Discussion on the amendment?
Okay, discussion, I'm sorry. Councilman Mays?
No, so what is this motion is to all throughout where it says medical
Just that one
Just
section.
it's only in one
That's the only
section.
place- Just that one section is the only place where it refers to as marijuana dispensary. All the rest of them.
And so it'll go through in first reading with that amended correction, and that should be it. Okay, thanks.
Roll, Madam Clerk, on the amendment.
Mr. Nolden,
Yes on the amendment.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Neely,
Yes.
Ms. Galloway,
Yes.
Ms. Van Buren,
Yes.
Mr. Kincaid,
Yes.
Mr. Mays,
Yes.
Ms. Poplar.
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no on the amendment.
Okay, on the ordinances, they were both moved and they were both supported, and we've had plenty of discussion on them. Roll, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Neely,
Yes.
Ms. Galloway,
Yes.
Ms. Van Buren,
Yes.
Mr. Kincaid,
Yes.
Mr. Mays,
Yes.
Ms. Poplar,
Yes.
Mr. Nolden.
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, we have the one add-on ordinance, it's 140502, which will be posted in our record. And again, it is the amendment to the International Fire Code. It was recommended by the International Fire Code Council for the fire department.
So
Move
move.
it.
Support.
Support. Move it and support.
Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. President, based upon the way we do our agenda, I'm apologizing to the public because we always allowed the public to speak before we took action, and I'm sure it's people heard us discussing. So, I'm going to vote in favor of this, and, you've seen how I voted, but I really apologize to the public for the agenda that's followed, because normally the public could have spoke on any of this stuff before we took action. It's the most ridiculous way of me to do business, and I really don't like the way that this agenda is set up for the emergency manager. I appreciate the public's patience, because it looks like after this vote that I'm going to vote in favor of, then we'll hear from the public after the fact. And I'm kind of appalled by this agenda, and I respectfully request that we are able to do our agenda the right way for the people.
Thank you, Councilman Mays. Roll, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Davis?
I mean, here.
Mr. Neely,
Yes.
Ms. Galloway,
Yes.
Ms. Van Buren,
Yes.
Mr. Kincaid,
Yes.
Mr. Mays,
Yes.
Ms. Poplar,
Yes.
Mr. Nolden,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no on 140502.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And to the public, all of these ordinances will be before the City Council in September, and there'll be a public hearing on each one of them at that time. This is a time set aside for members of the audience to address the City Council. Madam Clerk will call your name. Please come to the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes to address the City Council. And first to be called this evening,
First to be called is Mr. R.L. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell.
Hello, Mr. Mitchell. I reside at 579 East Linden Street Avenue. For you two, that's the address, 550. Well, anyway, I wanted to talk about that falling through the cracks. We got the mayor, that financial management gave somebody 60 days to count down to judgment. And for the record, I wanted to be known that the Reverend, it should be impeached, that guy across the street, this sheriff, instead of letting him go, that he got the councilman Mays locked up in jail. And I want to know, push comes to shove, Mays can get it done before 60 days. I want that to be put on the record. And like, and Scott, you giving somebody 3 minutes to address this kangaroo court court system you done turned it into. Over there you even got the Judge Farrells. Don't know how to, he know how to operate, but he just, man, what I'm saying is, man, push Mays one more time and then you'll see how fast you can give us 40 days before 60 days. And man, you know good well, I wasn't supposed to say a whole lot of stuff, but them 3 minutes, being careful what I say, address you the president, and Inez, I got to go through Inez to get to Peter Bays to put it on the record. And Ms. Pop, and the fire marshal Bill, talking about show me something. He showed us something. I want to congratulate him for catching them little rascals out there. He done the job by himself. It made the police department look bad. Always them vigilante guys jumping on grown folks, then let the teenagers get away. Arrested 19 grown up and 16 teenagers. That goes to show you, they give more respect to the teenagers in this city than just because of that sheriff over there. Y'all impeach that like you started.
thank you, R.L. Our next speaker,
Appreciate
Madam
your
Clerk.
support, R.L.
Our next speaker is Mrs. Bethany Hazard. Mrs. Hazard?
I'm Bethany Hazard. I live at 2553 Swayze. I've seen a lot of change in my neighborhood, not for the good, in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And it's really sad when I talk to people that are moving. Talked to another older gentleman today moving, put his whole life into the neighborhood. He's not happy the way the city is going. Nobody's happy with the water. Another older lady, she gets on her knees and cuts the grass around her sidewalk. She's leaving. What you're creating is blight by the actions, by not sending the police to the neighborhood when you started with that. I have neighbors that call me that moved, telling me their water bills, like for a month, $18 for 3 people, telling me to move. You guys should wake up and see what's really going on in the neighborhood. My neighborhood is all rentals. I'm the last one on my block just about that owns my home. I'm one of those people that I'm way below poverty level since we bought this house when my daughter was alive. My house was $68,000. It's worth 15, and I can't get a water discount because only 3.5% of my tax goes to the city. Well, you guys are the ones that took out the garbage pickup and the street light thing, so nobody can get a discount. What's the sense of me staying here? I'm fighting blight every day. I go get outside to pick up garbage, constantly calling the police on your renters you'd rather have than the homeowners that live there. Because they're shooting off guns, selling drugs, standing under the street light. shooting out the street light I had to call. As soon as they had it in, they shot it out again. I live in West Flint. It's a shame how the city worked on making the neighborhood ghetto. The only thing I see you working on downtown in your favorite areas. I'm angry about it. The water rates are atrocious. It's sad seeing people in my neighborhood going without water. It is a shame. In this country, people do not have water. We have the Great Lakes. My neighbor that moved to Nevada where they pumped it in from stinking Colorado. I have another neighbor that told me they're going to buy a new car. With the money they're saving on water. You ought to think about what you're doing to neighborhoods, destroying neighborhoods and people's lives.
Mr. President, can you explain to the public why we ain't responding and, in between?
Yeah, the emergency manager issued an order for us to respond at the end of all public speakers, and council members will then have the opportunity to respond to your concerns. So it's not that we don't want to interact with you, we're just following his order at this time.
Because some people, yes.
Our next speaker is Ms. Danita Pikes. Ms. Pikes?
Good evening. My name is Danita Pikes. My address is 1810 Terrace Court. And what I'd like to bring to this council's attention is the road condition on Terrace. When you come into the subdivision, it's the Country Club Meadows subdivision. If you're entering the subdivision from Cherokee, and if you turn left, the road currently, it's not a sinkhole yet, but there's it needs some attention. Someone needs to at least come and look at it. It's a high traffic area. I consider it a high traffic area because I sit on my porch during the summertime, and probably say within a 5 to 10 minute span, you're looking at maybe 40 to 50 cars coming and going. Because when you enter the subdivision, there's residential homes, and then if you continue into the subdivision, there's also an apartment complex, which is the Country Club Meadows apartment complex. And that being my community, I'd like to see something done before the road condition gets worse. Then we may have liability as far as property damage or physical damage to a person. And my home is, as I back out of my driveway Monday through Friday, leaving home, going to work, if it becomes a sinkhole, I can see the traffic being impeded, so there could possibly be issues with people coming and going the subdivision. There's more than one entrance into the subdivision, but that I see, again, because my home is near the entrance if you're coming down Cherokee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Ann Metcalf. Mrs. Metcalf?
Good evening, Council President.
Good evening.
My name is Aletha Ann Metcalf. I live at 1822 Terrace Court, and I came here, Ms. Pikes covered the thing about the subhole, and it is bad. But I came because we need a stop sign. We have a stop sign at the corner of Cherokee and Terrace. When I come out of my driveway and I'm on the corner and I want to make the turn to go on to Cherokee, if when there's cars parked in across the street at 1905 Terrace Court, it blocks the traffic coming from the apartments or from the area. And it's been several times when it's been near misses, when a person from the cul-de-sac is getting ready to turn and a car is zooming around the corner. It has been a time when I've even come out of Danita's driveway and I'm already backed out and somebody's coming out of the apartment complex and they're zooming. And with that hole there in the street like it is, they're going over to the left side to go around because they're trying to miss the hole. So it is really dangerous over there. And I'm afraid for the kids too when they're catching the bus because it's dark out. Well, it will be eventually when they catch the bus for school. Nobody's stopping. If the police want to get some tickets, they can come and sit in my my driveway or Danita's, and they would be able to clean up because they don't even do a roll through. They just drive through. Thank you. I hope you can get this addressed.
Thank you.
Mr. President, ain't no slick way to tell people that we hearing what they say, is it?
Terrace Court's in my ward, so.
Yeah, I know it. I was just letting them know they were new. I had never seen them, and I know you're hearing them.
Address it at the end.
Right.
I've already addressed it.
Our next speaker is Mrs. Barbara Griffiths Wilson. Ms. Wilson?
Hello, Council. My name is Barbara Griffith Wilson. I reside at 2026 Winus Avenue. I sit here and I listen to a lot of things, and some things I agree with and some things is, here and there. But I want to say that I'm appalled at the way Paul Herring was treated.
Amen.
I believe that if you were going to let him go, and I know you didn't do it. You didn't do it. You had nothing to do with it. But if he was going to be let go, he should have known 10 minutes before we come into this building. I think it's wrong. They say they're going to put it on YouTube, but a lot of the people who watch Channel 17 don't have access to YouTube.
Right.
Because a lot of them are little old ladies and little old men who are in their 80s and their 90s, and they're not trying to be bothered with YouTube. Now, there are some real hip ones that do that, but not all of them. And so I think it should be that not only if they want to do YouTube because they're so young and hip, then they should also consider Channel 17. Also make sure that it's on Channel 17.
Right.
That's the one issue I have. And the other issue I have is not really an issue, it's just sort of like a statement. When Councilwoman Galloway was talking about the medical marijuana, and it reminded me of the Prohibition days, how they forced people underground where people were selling hooch, as they called it, which was liquor, until the government could figure out how to tax it. And once they figured out how to tax it, then it was okay. It was open season. Anybody, just come on, we're going to have liquor stores. One thing I want to say about medical marijuana, although I could possibly use some, but I prefer not to, there is something called Rick Simpson's oil. All medical marijuana is not leafy and smokable.
Right.
But Rick Simpson's oil is used in many people who have cancer. It comes in a syringe. The syringe doesn't have a needle to it. It has a plastic cap on it, and you put 3 drops under your tongue the first day, and then you go 1 drop every day afterwards. I will say I tried it. I will say it made me woozy. I will say I gave it back. Because I don't want woozy, I want to feel normal. They said, well, it'll wear off after maybe 15 days. Well, that's too long for me. But I think that really, I think it needs to be decriminalized. Once it's decriminalized, then I think that the people that are in power can then regulate it, because I think that children shouldn't be able to go into, I don't know what they call them, head shops or whatever they call them. I don't think children should be allowed to go in there. And I think they shouldn't have had water and candy for sale because that draws children. Because if I pass by and I'm a kid, I want some candy. Woo, 3 minutes went fast. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Chris Del Moroni. Mr. Del Moroni.
Thank you. My name is Chris Del Moroni. I live in Flint, Michigan. There are many ways that a person can lose their home. They can stop making more